The Ironhead Sportster has two separate oil systems. One is under pressure and feeds the crank, the cams and the top end. The other is not under pressure, it's just sitting there getting sloshed about, and it feeds the gearbox and the primary. If we take the engine oil to start off with, by which I mean, God, why won't it focus? It essentially, down here where the drain plug is, there's your drain plug, behind it, there it is. That Jubilee clip is holding the oil line on. Where that goes, that's gravity, well, it's pump fed us, pump sucked, I suppose. That goes all the way down the back of the bike and under it, and it goes into the oil pump. There you can see the Jubilee clip there. And this is the oil pump, and it sucks, and it squeezes, and it shoves it into the cams, which are behind this, and it shoves it up the oil feed pipes into the top end. It falls back down. The pump's still whizzing away. Any oil that comes in this end gets pumped out of this one, and this goes back under the bike and up the back, and it goes into the top of the oil tank. So it's that there. That's the return. And when you take off your lid and you look inside the oil tank with a torch, you'll see it going blip, 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 blip. Don't worry that it's not gushing. It's not a pressure washer. It's just an oil pump. It's fine. Of course, when you put the oil in the primary, the gearbox should be in there. And at the bottom, there's a gap. So the oil from the primary is also the gearbox oil, which is interesting. I've often wondered if you could put like 90 weight gearbox oil in it. Would that be a good idea? Answers in the comments section. But this is a great idea because it's not completely unit. The only real problem I had with the various Japanese bikes I've had, 60s and 70s Japanese bikes, is that all the crap from the gearbox and the swarf and the bits are flying around the engine as well, the crankshaft and the top end and delicate stuff like that. I've never thought that was a good idea to do it. And whereas this Harley looks like it's unit, it's not. The engine, cams and everything are completely separate from the transmission. In fact, there is absolutely no reason, there's no reason why you should do this, but there's no reason why you shouldn't just cut it off. But you could definitely do a separate gearbox on that. You don't need, the applied you could cut off the entire gearbox housing, I'm certain of it. Oh, an additional word about breathers. You might say, well, you've only described two pipes and it's like the head of Medusa, this thing. Yeah, there's a lot of pipes that look like oil lines, but they're really not. This one is a breather that comes from the cam area, and that goes to the oil tank, sure, but it's only to vent it. It goes into the top of the oil tank on the other side from the one that returns it. So that's a breather. Most people are familiar with this one. That should have a big thick hose on it as well. And that big thick hose, generally speaking, goes up to the air filter housing. A third breather is this little nubbin on top of the gearbox. Now, as I've explained, the gearbox and the primary aren't under pressure, so it can afford to be tiny. There's not much coming out of that, if anything, and there's generally a tube that points it at the rear chain, which is useful, because my rear chain doesn't seem to rust. Well, not often. Under no circumstances should you attach this breather or this breather to the rear chain, because it will just gush out. It will soak the rear tyre, you'll fall off, and there'll be no oil in the bike. True story. Cheery bye.